All right, so my apologies. I didn't explain the output node well enough last time. So when you use multiple outputs like this, the one that's always going to display is always going to be the 0 index output. So this index 0, this is always going to be what gets displayed when we jump up. Right? So if you're wanting multiple outputs for a reason, if you're planning on picking this up somewhere, you can use an output node. There's special syntax that you use inside of an object merge when you want to pull in, what the output is. And I would have to look it up. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but you would use that to then pull in the data from your Lego maker, and then you would tell it what index you want to pull from, right? Because this output is index 0, this output is index 1. Index 0 is always going to be the default when you jump up one level, right? So we see here, that's what we're seeing. So if we want this to be what gets displayed here, then this is actually what we want. So even without changing my display flag, you'll see when we jump up, ta-da, there's our new, it's now displaying properly. If you're not merging this in elsewhere, you only need one output. Right? If you're not going to be pulling this in. Another way to grab data, if you don't want to deal with outputs and indices and all these kind of things, is we can put down a null node, right? For example, and we stick a null node here and call this, out brick basic or something like that. Whatever this is, right? Whatever this thing you're building is. Great. And I'll delete this. And then, we jump out here, and so we want in another geometry, we want to be able to access that we're building over there. So we're going to put down an object merge, and then we can just navigate to our Lego maker, and there it is. The reason I use all capitals is because it'll put that at the top of the list when it's all capitalized like that. And I believe nulls that are all capitals get bumped to the top of the list, which is nice. Makes it easy. I usually say export relative path. There's reasons why you would and wouldn't depending on what you're doing. So 9 times out of 10, I use relative paths. There are certain times that I'll use an explicit path. But now you can see that this is, if we turn off the ghosting, hide other objects, this is bringing in that basic brick. So if I wanted to use this for some other function to generate something else where I didn't want the tops of the bricks, then I could merge this in, and now I could do whatever I need to do with this, right? Whether that's, let's say we're gonna bevel it after the fact, something crazy like that. Like, all right, let's bevel this guy, not on a particular thing, and there we go. So so suddenly this becomes, that's not what I wanted. I wanted a normal. All right, that becomes our way of kind of the two main ways of pulling things out. You don't have to use a null. I can object merge and go find the exact node, but if you're not naming your nodes and your tree gets really big, then it can become a real challenge to try to figure out where that node is. So naming is always good. Using nulls to kind of map out the different sections is good. Oftentimes, for my own visual, I will use network boxes for organization. So I'll come in here and put a network box, and I'll call this, brick basic. And I might color that. If I hit C, it brings up my little color widget, right? And then these look to be our tube tops. I'm not sure what this section is, but anything that helps us to organize. When your scenes get really big, right, and all of a sudden you have all this stuff, what can happen is you end up with these long curves going all over the place that become really hard to keep organized, and can become crazy. And then you might have a line crossing a network, and if you drop something, right, like I'll just use the normal for example. If I put down a new node and I go and connect it, it'll drop in. So sometimes just by moving things around, you start breaking your setup, and it was unintentional because you have this long line kind of running through. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll do something like this. And again, I know this is a simplified network, but we'll call this out top. Again, I don't know exactly what your setup is. Top basic, and I'll call this, maybe top advanced. Whatever's happening here, advanced. And now say there's a whole bunch of stuff happening between here and there, and then I need to use those pieces, I'll use an object merge from within the same container, right? I'll throw down an object, oh, sorry, go back. I'll put down an object merge, and I'll just grab this and say relative path, so it's saying ... so inside of the current container I'm in, give me out brick basic, so I'll plug that in. I'm just going to copy and paste this, and this was top, and you can see it's going to autofill for me, top basic, and I'll paste one more, and this is going to be out top advanced. It is case sensitive, and then now I can have a whole bunch of modules that do different pieces of construction, and then I can merge those all together at the end or do new things to them. These modules may need to go into another stage after this, and so there may be a series of nodes after that. And it's a way of keeping your node graph as clean as possible. Now, sometimes when you're kind of deving as you go, that's not possible, and it just becomes this giant thing. I do regularly try to go back and make sure I'm cleaning up my node network and adding as much annotation as I can in case somebody else is going to inherit my file later. It gives them a little bit of a chance to be able to jump in and actually see what's going on. So I hope this helps. I hope this explains why we would use nulls versus outputs. And again, usually, I see that you've got this Lego Maker HDA, it looks like you're setting up, so this has been embedded here, which is great. If we come in here and we say type properties, input, output, we can usually add additional outputs to this, and you can start creating complicated outputs, right? So, and certain tools have that, right? So if we were to look at like any of the grooming tools or the vellum tools, right? So let's look at, any of these. We'll say vellum, cloth config, right? You can see here, this is just like your, let's see if I can unlock this. Slide in of contents, jump in. This is just a network, right? That does a whole bunch of really complicated things. If we go down to the bottom, we'll see that there's some outputs here. So here you go. Here's output 2, which is index 1. Somewhere else over here is going to be an output 0, and then there's going to be an output 2, right? As far as the indices, so 0, 1, and 2, because we have 3 outputs here. So this is our indice 0, this is our indice 1, and this is our indice 2. So a lot of the Houdini tools are really just HDAs wrapped around a series of nodes that build stuff. This is why often effects artists will look at these as inspiration, and then based on the pipeline they're in and the specific needs they're in, they'll roll their own version of these tools that is more specific to their pipeline and to the current need of whatever it is they're building. So if when you start getting to that point, then this becomes something that understanding how outputs work becomes really, really critical. At the beginning, just know that you really, for simplicity, try to keep it to one output unless you know how to use these outputs, and you want to keep that as indice 0, and that's going to be what it shows. So let's see if I move this to 1. I'm just curious. Oh, so you see, there you go. Like, even with that being a different indice, being that there's no other outputs here, it's always going to show, right? When you have the output node, this is what kicks out. If you have more than one output, right? So let's put down another output node. If you just drop down an output, we'll say we want it to be this guy here, you'll actually get an error because these two, this one automatically. So if we put this at 0, this will actually get mad. Did they make this better? I don't know with this. Maybe in a regular output. Usually this gets angry because now we have 2 outputs that are the same indice, and that creates a conflict in what's supposed to come out of this node. So this is not bueno. You don't want that. So you usually need to make sure, and you saw here that they're trying to make it smarter. That I wonder if I drop down another one, is it gonna? There you go. So it's automatically incrementing based on the outputs that you have. So, but again, one output the indices 0 is the default as to what gets drawn when you move up to that object level. Hope this helps. This can be really confusing. This is the power of Houdini, is that there's a million ways to do it, and everyone has their own way. Understanding some of these kind of fundamentals and things of how, like, what are the rules to use it, and when to use the rules and when to break the rules, because there's always a reason to not follow the rules. So hope this helps, and let me know if I can answer any more questions.